What are you doing here? Where is Jack?
I am Jack.
Oh.
Listen. I didn't bring a calculator. I got a phone.
It's okay. Welcome. It's Friday. It's time for the Jack and Bill Show.
The world runs on Duncan.
Exactly. Today it's the Jack and West Show. Jack is out of town today.
Why is it the Jack and West Show if Jack is out of town?
Oh, correction. It's the Bill and West Show.
You know what's also funny about corrections? The market.
Really?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Well, I think we need to preface this show with anything that I say, I'm not a financial advisor.
That's a true statement.
Except for that. That's a lie. No, wait. Which part's a lie? Two truths, one lie.
That's a good segue, Wesley, because...
Have you ever rode a Segway?
No. Thankfully, never. We thought it would be interesting to talk about the role of influencers and specifically advertisers in the context of investing. And Wesley has a background in social media marketing. And there's
it's almost like it pains you to say that. Like you always bring like an unnecessary pause between social media and marketing as if like there's some type of like boomer angst.
That's because I'm old.
Okay. As long as we said it. Oh, yeah.
So if I, for example, if I pull my phone out and I get on Twitter, what I see is a ton of so-called experts opinionating.
You're in the midst of them.
And I'm in the midst of them. And they're opinionating. Oftentimes they're wrong. But I would like to explore the motives behind these influencers and also why we, the audience, can be so susceptible to what we're reading.
Because we've been inundated with infomercials since the 80s. If you act now for $29.95, you won't have to pay shipping and handling, and we'll send you this extra Ginsu knife for a friend.
But wait, there's more.
We'll also throw in the ShamWow.
The ShamWow.
Not Shamu. Not to be confused with the whale. This is going to be an entertaining show.
This will be an entertaining show.
You have notes. Let's go with your notes.
Okay. So I said that there are a lot of so-called experts that are on social media, but it's not just social media. It's not just Twitter, Facebook. It's also the major news networks.
Yeah, and say like some of these guys got shows. They're just they're entertainment value for the market.
That's true. That's true. So what are some common characteristics that we see from so-called experts?
Charisma.
That's good.
They come across well as far as in front of the camera. Not necessarily.
Not like me.
No, very much unlike you. But they're able to communicate well. And with that, they put a lot of animation into what they're saying and all this other stuff. But if they just got in front of you and said, well, to be perfectly honest, this isn't a great buy, we probably wouldn't listen.
Probably not.
But they cue the dramatic music and it's like, wah, 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 or, ooh, wah, wah. It's like an old Western. But there's so much, we've talked about investment psychology on the show quite a bit. Even when we're not talking about it, we end up talking about it. But there's so much psychology that's introduced into advertising, to marketing, where there's certain color schemes that people pay attention to more. All these things begin to play into a factor of creating a brand and ultimately creating a trust between the viewer or the consumer and the one producing what needs to be consumed. So you have all these different elements coming across. And one of the things that's come out because in a way, because of social media, we've always had celebrities in some form of another, but now we have these influencers, like you take Logan Paul or Jake Paul, like, or other people that maybe outside of social media probably wouldn't have had a name at all. And even using Logan Paul as an example, because he's been a major voice in certain crypto circles, and then even in the development of a phone app game that was similar to Pokemon, found himself having to apologize greatly. I don't fully understand the dynamic of it, but basically there was some mishaps in the developer, and so his name's all over it. But when it came down to it, he was working with a third party, and you can only control so much of what people do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but because people trusted his name and his brand and everything else, he's the one that's left on the hook. And so you have these moments where you have, people that are influencers that you normally wouldn't take advice from. Like, you're not going to take medical advice from Oprah, but yet we'll listen.
Well, that's true. I mean, look, celebrity endorsements are nothing new. There's nothing wrong with, a celebrity endorsing a bar of soap brand, for example. But do we want to take financial advice from a celebrity?
Well, I mean, you can't throw the soap out with the bathwater, Bill.
There you go.
You have to be, in order for that celebrity to endorse said soap, they have to understand, the epidermis. They have to understand the skin, the effects, the chemicals that are in the soap.
Do they?
Well, they should. But
do they? Or do they just understand the contract?
Well, they understand the money value. Likewise, it's the same thing when it comes down to them endorsing a specific investment, because in the end, they're making money. That's their goal. They're actually much more of an expert to give you advice on soap than they are in finances. How is somebody that's making millions of dollars based upon endorsing random products at a position to tell you how to start a business because they're using their name, something that was popular? And that'd be like George Foreman trying to come to you and tell you how to make a barbecue. Somebody else developed the George Foreman grill, one of the highest performing, highest selling, infomercial type items that are out there, and then him coming to tell you how to develop a barbecue, even though he himself never developed one. He didn't develop the George Foreman grill. Somebody else developed that and then said, hey, we need to slap somebody's name on it, and it happened to take off.
Yeah, it probably did better than had it been named the Wesley Roderick Grill.
Exactly. Mainly because I was a toddler probably when it came out. Because I'm significantly younger. So
if we as consumers have the discernment to question the credibility of a celebrity endorsement on a consumer product like a bar of soap, then we should have similar discernment when it comes to financial advice.
You would think.
From a celebrity, you would think. But we did have an issue recently that's made a lot of news concerning crypto endorsements by celebrities.
Right.
And the problem with that is that, one, these people don't know you, don't know your goals and objectives, probably don't know the product very well, but they're being paid to promote it.
But I mean, let's kind of even put whatever the investment vehicle aside, whatever it is. When it comes down to it, somebody from a talking screen cannot give you financial advice without knowing your financial situation.
Exactly.
Their financial situation is probably significantly different than the average person that's watching that. And so, where, again, not a financial advisor, but if they're telling you to put money into something, but if I've learned anything being in this office, is if you're not willing or in the position where you could possibly lose said money, you probably shouldn't be putting your money into it. You don't need to be putting your rent money into an investment that you're thinking that you're going to get turned around in 15 days.
That's good. You're learning a few things in the office.
And teaching way more.
There you go. Here's another common theme that I've observed from the so-called experts is that there is a tendency to go for shock value.
Absolutely.
And the shock value...
tell me what the shock value is.
It's rarely positive. You see fewer forecasts of shock that are positive, more forecasts of shock that are negative. Well, in the industry, we call these Cassandras. That's a term that came from Greek mythology. And Cassandra was cursed with the gift of prophecy that, while accurate, would not be believed by anyone. But today, we use that term to refer to people who claim to see impending doom. I guess you could call these people Chicken Littles.
I would.
There you go. But their claim to fame is that there's something terrible and they feel like they have to warn you about it. And they're using that to garner attention, to get more views, to sell more newsletters, to whatever it is.
Right. Which, I mean, what you're the broad picture you're painting with that is actually really interesting. When you think about the story of Chicken Little, he had an individualistic experience with something falling from the sky, which then got turned into him broadcasting from a loud mouth, basically. I mean, think about making social media posts, YouTube videos, Instagram, TikToks, whatever, however you want to look at it. He experienced, I think it was just rain, if I remember correctly. He had a raindrop falling on his head. There's a song about that. But
extrapolated that to mean that the sky is falling.
He turned it into the sky is falling, which sounds way more impressive than going rain. It's raining. It's gonna rain, and we that's what news and media and headlines, not just news and media, but you're gonna see it in printed form. You're gonna see it in spoken form. You're gonna see it in pictures. It's basically becoming shock radio. What's that guy's name that I can't remember his name, radio show host,
New York City.
Yeah, long curly hair, not Weird Al, but you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
But I mean, he was known for having shock radio, and it was to get listeners, not even viewers. Now we're in the era of everything's like a live video, and he's barely a subject matter.
Well, his shock back in the day is the norm today.
Right. Exactly.
I've learned over the years that those with the loudest voice, those who are clamoring the loudest, tend to be the most wrong. Why is that?
Oh, you tell us, Mr. Wizard.
I've found that there's something about people who are very confident that they tend to be very humble, and they don't feel the need to magnify their opinions on others.
Right. I mean, you're going to find people that are oftentimes swayed by the wind or headlines, that they go to and fro. They don't, there's not much grounding. And so, like, you think of, like, the Chicken Littles in life. Every time there's a move, if you watch whatever vehicle you're watching your news from, it doesn't matter if it's blue, if it's red, if it's purple, or whatever, there's a narrative. And the narrative isn't necessarily always political. The narrative is always monetary. You don't have to have a political narrative in order for you to have a media outlet, because the media narrative is more viewers equals more dollars. We will do what is necessary to have more dollars. Everyone wants dollars.
That's it. So, talking about false experts, so we address the doom and gloomers. All right, here's the next category, the armchair quarterbacks.
That's like a backseat driver, right?
Exactly, a backseat driver. I mean, there is no barrier to entry for someone to express their views, because with social media, everyone has an audience. And
potentially could have an audience.
Yeah. I remember the last presidential election. It seemed like everyone was a constitutional lawyer.
Yes.
All right. During COVID, everyone was an epidemiologist.
Everyone had a medical degree.
Exactly. And today, it's like everyone is a macroeconomist, central banker. It's like we all want to confer this expertise, no matter the subject, because we have access to information at our fingertips. Unfortunately, a lot of that information is wrong.
Or maybe it's not even wrong. It's
misunderstood.
Well, it's out of context. Because what happens is they're taking, like right now, we're in an office that's full of books. Some of them old and some of them older. I think there's one new one over there.
There is a common denominator. They're all covered in dust.
That's a different story.
Another subject.
That's my allergies. But my point being is what's happening is these pieces of information that people come across are pieces and sections pulled out of context to make a point for that specific story, that specific headline. And, if you can't trust Abraham Lincoln, who are you going to trust, right? Because Honest Abe, he said this. He goes, you have to be careful what you read on the internet because most facts are made up.
And he knew about the internet.
He did. If you think about it, 80% of statistics are all made up too. So when you have pieces of information that are not connected, because, we, especially in the finance industry, we look at everything has to be historical. The problem is when people are trying to predict the future. And now we have to look at the past to see the future, but we don't know the future until after it happened in the first place. Sometimes it takes us how long to realize that
that's right.
Something's already taken place.
Well, it's like the saying, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes.
Are you saying that history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think here's some questions everyone can ask themselves when evaluating the credibility of said expert from any source. But we're talking about the context of investing. One, do you have skin in the game? There's a lot of voices out there. But just because they can speak eloquently and intelligently about investing doesn't mean that they are necessarily investing money. And are they investing other people's money? Because that brings in the aspect of accountability. And also a third question, are you subject to regulators? So again, accountability, because if there's no accountability, there is no credibility.
Well, there could be credibility. Credibility is something that could be given. But if they have no accountability, should we give room?
Should we ascribe?
Should we give credibility is the question. And here's a simple scenario. I can answer questions from people who call the office. And I can answer them confidently and intelligently. Does it mean that it's actual correct advice? Does it mean that it's correct information? Just because somebody calls and just because somebody can deliver information confidently, without hesitation, without sounding like they're uninformed doesn't mean that it's good information. It just means that they're a communicator. It's like, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. I'm not a financial advisor, but I play one at the office. And so it's easy for people to step into a role that they're not necessarily an expert in, or
but they can sound like they're an expert.
They can sound like they know what they're doing, but some of those people are paid for that. Just because somebody has their name on a talk show or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that they fully have a grid for it. It doesn't mean that they are even successful in the industry. It kind of goes back to those who can't teach. So you have more notes.
I do. I'll just say the accountability is very important.
Yeah.
Because unless you're accountable to clients, meaning that you're managing other people's money, you're accountable to regulators, overseers, you are free. If you're not accountable, then you're free to say and do anything you want. And that's potentially dangerous.
Right.
Okay, so let's get to motives, the subject of motives. What motivates people to get out there and say shocking things, use hyperbole in their pronouncements? What would you say the motivations are?
Well, what I would say that's important to me when I'm wanting to communicate something. Money, man. It's all about the money.
It's always about the money.
But the real question should not be what convinces people or what motivates people to do that. Not at all. What really the question should be is, what is motivating people to give ear to that type of rhetoric?
Well, that's my next question.
Oh, I'm glad I just jumped over it.
You just jumped over it.
Well, I do
have some thoughts on the subject.
But why do we fall for it? That answers that. That answers the motive. The reason why people fall for it, or the reason why the motive behind it, is because people will listen. That's it. People will listen. Just like this show. People will. Did we just break the fourth wall?
I don't know.
Do you even know what that means?
No. But that to me, that sounds like the argument over the drug epidemic in this country. We blame it on the suppliers. And then countries like Mexico, they blame it on our incessant demand. Okay, so similarly, there's a lot of crazy people out there giving unhealthy investment advice. Is it because we're giving ear to it, or is it because there's a lot of crazy people out there?
It's a give and take. Because now you're getting more into the psychology aspect of it, and human nature, and there's a part of human nature that's drawn to the dramatic. If you go all the way back in history of like the forms of entertainment that occurred, whether you have people that are in the Colosseums and the fighting and stuff like that, or you go back to old theater type productions and stuff like that, you can go back hundreds of years, generations, and people were entertained by drama. So having that type of there's an aspect of it, not to get too deep and like spiritual, but there's a part of it where the soul is being fed. It's being fed, and it's eating those things like candy, because there's something about internally that the word satisfy isn't the word, but it entertains. It entertains, and it allows it becomes a form of escapism in a sense. But anyways, we're getting off into the weeds.
No, that's good. I do have some observations on the motive. There are people who do want attention, and for someone who can come out as a contrarian, they can take that position of, hey, I know something that no one else knows.
Yeah.
Look at me. Now, being a contrarian as an investor is actually a good strategy if it's used in a healthy way, because we should all be, as investors, employing a healthy degree of skepticism and not just following the herd, so to speak. But the opposite side of that coin is just outright foolishness. So there are people out there who are saying these things that you just kind of have to scratch your head and like, that's just foolishness, and just dismiss it outright. But you kind of alluded to this earlier when you were talking about the keys to you it kind of implied it, but the keys to long-term investing success, they're not sexy things.
I can't say long-term investment success.
But I can,
because I'm not a financial advisor, right?
But I can. So those characteristics, things like humility, patience, keeping your emotions in check, those types of things are not sexy and don't garner views.
Right.
But they work. So oftentimes the people you see screaming the loudest, they're not talking about those things. They're talking about hyperbole. There's another motive that we should all be aware of too, and that is the need to be right. There's a saying that a stopped clock is right twice a day. So
I thought it was the broken clock is twice. Right.
Same thing, whether it's stopped or broken. Are we still recording, by the way?
We are.
Okay.
It just made noise.
I just heard our camera make noise.
Yeah, that was confusing to me.
Well, what that's saying is that you could be wrong, but occasionally, by accident, you may be right.
Right.
And there are people in the industry who just get anchored on a narrative, and even after that narrative has been disproven, they can't let it go because they put too much into it. They've invested too much into the narrative, and they will die on that narrative sword. Okay. Any thoughts on that?
Well, no.
Good. So, let's end
to be perfectly honest, I got distracted by the shutter.
Me too.
On the camera, and then
too.
I had to look at everything, and then I know you were saying words.
No, it's okay.
But they weren't actually they weren't entertaining enough for me.
You just made the point. I'm glad you're paying attention, not. Okay, so why do we fall for this stuff? Well, a lot of it is just psychology. We have an innate desire for understanding. We want simple explanations, simple narratives to explain things that we don't understand. And so we do tend to gravitate towards narratives. That's one reason why we fall for it. I'd say another reason why we fall for it is that we have this tendency to view things in black and white. Things, whatever it is in life, certainly investing, we like black and white. We like cause and effect. We like formulas.
Either or. Yeah.
Either or. But just like in life, in investing, there are lots of shades of gray. The shades of gray can be things like assumptions that we make. And the fact of the matter is we make a lot of faulty assumptions. Another shade of gray is incomplete information. We take, and you mentioned this earlier, we take some elements of truth and then we make an assumption based on what we perceive and what we understand. But it's always a healthy thing to question, what am I missing in my analysis? Could I be wrong?
Sometimes you need a passenger to point out the blind spot.
Exactly.
Because you can't always see everything. And I mean, I think that's also because if we continue down the path and where we're talking about right now, then all we're going to do is create fear mongering, which is basically what, some of, you're going to find popular in TV with news reports is like, because the reality is is you're not going to know everything at all times. There is always going to be an element of mystery in life. And prior to the existence of this device, we didn't know everything at all times. If you wanted to know Patrick Swayze's birthday, you would have to wait until you found an encyclopedia that told you Patrick Swayze's birthday. And I know how much of a fan of Patrick Swayze and Dirty Dancing you are.
Not Dirty Dancing, but Roadhouse.
Well, I think you also really appreciated his role in Ghost. You have a firm, like kind of just love and passion for pottery with the afterlife.
Yeah, whatever that means.
I have no idea.
I don't.
But
know
I just
what
figured
you're
I'd go on a
talking about.
ramble. But my point being is, like, prior to the existence of this, even though this is tiny, we didn't have information at our fingertips.
That's right.
And so we had to live with the point of a little bit of unknowing. And so in many ways, these devices have actually put us at a kind of in a bad place, because now we feel like we do know everything, but in all actuality, we only know according to what we're able to think about the research.
I'd say it's like reading at a sixth grade level. We know headlines.
Right.
Because of this, we know headlines, but we're not willing to take the deeper dive to really go for understanding, complete understanding. It's like, for example, there was a CNN commentator who was warning about the demise of the dollar. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm just citing this as an example. What was the basis for that? Well, the basis of that was some recent news articles about China exploring bilateral trade agreements with Saudi Arabia and other countries. And so you take some elements of truth, and then you reach this conclusion, and now you have people saying the dollar as the world's reserve currency is dead. Okay, that's a pronouncement that's patently false, but you can see how far you have to go. And that's the kind of thing that gets people into fear mongering.
Yeah. Any headline, it's you can watch your local news and it's like, local woman taken, for $10,000 through Facebook Messenger. And then all of a sudden, everybody is like, let's uninstall Facebook Messenger from our phone, blah, blah, blah. But understanding when you have how many millions, if not billions of millions of users on, say, Facebook, because you're probably watching it from Facebook this video from Facebook right now, that didn't have any issues.
Correct.
But what they're doing is they're taking and putting the one bad incident in front of you repetitively, instead of, what you're not going to hear on news is a very over-the-top animated individual going, Bill, you're going to have a great day today. Today is a great day to have a good day. Buy that coffee for the person behind you when you're in line today. And make sure that they have a good day because you're having a good day. What you're going to hear today is today's going to suck because we're going to have rain and wind coming, and it's going to be somewhere between the Wizard of Oz and Escape from Alcatraz outside. And you don't know if you're going to be cold or swimming. You don't know if there's going to be wind coming through. You're not entirely sure if you're about to be chased by a group of monkeys.
Right. And even if you do survive today, we're all going to die because of global warming and nuclear.
And don't forget the pollution from cows.
Most of the show has been about false expertise.
Exactly. That's why we have me on it.
Exactly. But you know what? Let's turn it inward and let's examine ourselves.
Right.
All right. I don't proclaim to be an expert. I work in this industry.
Right.
And one of the best things that I can do for myself and for clients is to admit that I don't know everything. And Jack and I like to say that we're forever learning, forever improving, and we have made plenty of mistakes, and hopefully we've learned from those mistakes. My point is that even the experts get it wrong. All right, take economics. Economics is a social science. It's not a hard science like physics.
Is it economics or economics? That's the question.
That's your question.
No, that's the question that honestly should be asked to our audience. Is it economics or economic? Can I talk? Is it economics or economics? Is that a hard E or a soft E?
I don't think it really matters. But the point is it's a social science. And the one common denominator in the study of economics is people. And people are not, as assumed, rational decision makers. They are not, as assumed, seeking their best interests. So I'll throw that out there. Economists like to create economic models, and an economic model is a simplified description of reality.
That is way different than what I thought.
That's what it is. It could be empirical, which is based on data, but oftentimes it's theoretical.
See, I was thinking like a Calvin Klein individual walking down with a dollar sign.
Well, of course you would. Now, let's take financial models like a discounted cash flow. And I know most people are thinking, what? Okay, well, this is a common tool for valuing a business. Well, it's very straightforward, but it's full of assumptions. And because of assumptions, it's prone to error. You mentioned forecasting. Forecasting is full of errors. No one has that crystal ball. We can make intelligent assumptions about the near future based on history and the present and assumptions, but it doesn't mean we'll be right.
I mean, look at a farmer's almanac. You have so much historical data about the weather, but we get it wrong all the time.
And people still buy that.
People still listen to the weathermen. I mean, I've literally pulled up weather on my phone, and it's saying it's raining where I'm at.
And I see blue skies.
And then it's not raining. But then yesterday, when we left the gym, it didn't say anything about rain, and it was raining.
There you go.
So, I mean, we should have just reported that the sky was falling.
Literally.
And just, nah.
You know, I'll say this one last thing, and that is the black swan effect. This idea of randomness. Even if we knew everything about everything, there's still random events that happen.
Well, they wouldn't be random if we knew everything about everything.
All right, thank you for that correction.
Thank you.
But there's still this element of randomness in life and in markets. And I remember after the credit crisis, you know, people would look back on that and refer to it as a black swan event. And it became very popular for people to be looking for the next black swan. And it was easy to succumb to that thinking. Well, if it's a black swan, you're not supposed to be able to see it. It's a metaphor for something that doesn't exist.
Like Bigfoot.
Like Bigfoot. So, I think we've had an interesting discussion here, Wesley.
I agree. I mean, if you've made it this far, here's what we'd really want you to comment below. Is it economics or economics? That's what I want to know. Is it economics or economics? Is it Fourier or Fourier?
I just want to know who made it this far.
Well, they probably just tuned in.
Maybe so.
They caught this. They saw your shiny head and my shiny head, and said, wow, there's a glare coming off of these guys' heads.
More so mine than yours.
This is true.
Thank you for watching.
Sorry for watching.
Thank you for putting up with the two of us. It's been fun. And Jack will be back. No, actually, next Friday is a holiday.
Yeah.
So we'll see you in 2 weeks. If you have any questions, what are you whispering about? If you have any questions, reach out, and we'd be happy to answer any and all of your questions. Thank you very much.
Not me, though. I'm not a financial advisor.